you can see in this photograph, there's a small black dog statue next to the post. So that's where we had learned this was the pet cemetery area through talking to family members. And then there's just some tarps laid out for some of the soil. You can see in the back the markers that had been distinguished and laid out by ERT for the fire pit area that I had talked about earlier.
Your Honor, I think at this point it's appropriate to turn to public access.
I agree.
Your Honor, I'm at a bit of a. I have no idea if this is, I can't see if this. Well, I'll ask, Detective, can you see that image in your monitor?
Yes,
Can you see most of it?
yes.
Can you describe for the jury what's been marked as State's Exhibit 11B? What did you observe there?
Can I see? Is there a way I can use the pointer?
I have a suggestion also, Mr. Wood, just because I understand what you're doing to try to line that up since you can't see the monitor. Do you want to set a notepad or something on there and get it oriented, and you could set on top of that just so that it's lined up?
If I could have the screen for 1 moment, thank you. You remember that suggestion? Detective, what did you observe in State's Exhibit 11B?
It's hard to describe without the pointer, but I'll do my best. In the middle of that photograph, you can start to see the different color and the changes in the soil from dry to a wet, moist dirt. You can start to see to the left just a little bit of that area. You can see the white piece sticking out and it's burnt on top, and that's charred bone that's starting to stick out, and all the little pieces next to it are pieces of burnt flesh, tissue. Well, we later determined were organs that were all kind of, that's the top of what was inside the bucket. So that's what we first started to see when we started to excavate.
And at this point, were you still using the hand tools?
Yes.
Explain for the jury what you observed in State's Exhibit 11C.
So as we started to excavate down further, some of the top of the mass of burnt flesh wasn't really attached to anything. And so when we would start to dig away towards the sides, it would kind of come apart. It wasn't part of that original mass. And so what you're looking at on this blue tarp is burnt flesh still attached to some bone. The upper left part of that that section that you're looking at is part of the hip bone, but it still has burnt flesh attached to it, and dirt and yeah, just fatty burnt tissue.
You described for the jury, what you observed in States Exhibit 11D.
So when I talked about, it started to take a roundish shape, this is what I'm referring to. And we dug around the sides of it, trying to get to the bottom, because like I said, the goal was to get underneath, have 3 or 4 guys in there and just lift it onto the tarp. So that's what you're looking at in this photograph, is just the burnt flesh. It's still just kind of inside that.
And Judge, could we approach for a sidebar, please?
Yes.
And that's part of a human skull just to the right of that, the green bucket. There were teeth there in the dirt as well. But that's what you're looking at, it's just a close up of the bottom of it.
Detective, what can you explain for the jury what you observed in States Exhibit 11F?
So once we removed that mass, and put it on the blue tarp, there was still some wet soil underneath. So we dug down even further to make sure that we had excavated everything we needed. And so what you're looking at, you can see the tarps in the background we had put up. You can see some of the hand tools that we used just to the right of that hole. But that's what you're looking at, is just after we got that mass out, the wet soil.
Detective, what did you observe in states of 11G?
So these were part of a tile that kind of broke apart when we tried to lift it out of the ground. There's pieces of charred bone, there's parts of a skull on the bottom left, covered in dirt, and they're still burnt, rotting flesh still attached to the bone. So that's what you're looking at that one. These were the pieces that broke off.
Detective, I believe you testified that you assisted in transferring those remains to Madison County to the hospital, correct?
Correct, I followed behind the corner.
Was Lieutenant Ball with you again?
He was.
Once you got up to the hospital, what did you do?
We observed the Fremont County coroner, Brenda Dye, transfer Tylee's remains into the morgue. The morgue was unlocked, but there was evidence they put up. And at that point, myself and Lieutenant Ball went back to the defendant Daybell's residence.
And what did you do once you got back there?
We assisted and made sure there were no other burial sites or anything that the ERT team needed assistance with. At that point, we decided that we were going to take JJ and Tylee to the Ada County Coroner's Office to have an autopsy performed. So roughly 4 in the afternoon on June 10th, 2020, it was decided that we were going to follow the county coroner with the remains of JJ and Tylee to the Ada County Coroner's Office for an autopsy the next morning.
And when did you arrive in Ada County, approximately?
Approximately 8 or 9 in the evening on June 10th.
And what did you do once you got there?
We went directly to the coroner's office, and JJ and Tylee were dropped off, and the coroner's office took custody of both JJ and Tylee.
So that was later in the evening.
Correct.
And was an autopsy performed that night?
No.
When was the autopsy?
The
Judge, I'm gonna object. There needs to be some foundation.
Overruled, if you know, you can answer.
The autopsy was performed June 11th, early morning hours.
Well, that was the next day.
Correct.
And were you present for that?
Yes, I was.
And where did that autopsy take place?
At the Ada County Coroner's Office.
So when you arrived at the coroner's office, what did you do first?
Initially, when we arrived, we had a little debrief with the medical examiner, Garth Warren. He told us what he expected.
Judge, objection.
Grounds,
Hearsay?
sustained.
You met with Dr. Warren.
Correct.
What was the purpose of that meeting?
To debrief us on what to expect that morning.
What did you do next?
We went to the room where the autopsy was performed. Put the sanitary booties on our shoes, signed in on a whiteboard with our name and cell phone numbers. So he had a record of everybody that was in the room. And at that point, we stood back against the wall and observed the autopsy.
Now, as a detective, you don't perform an autopsy, correct?
Correct.
But you were able to see it take place.
That's correct.
And what did you observe happening during that autopsy?
One of his team members brought out the body bag. And I recognized it to be the same body bag that we took from defendant Daybell's backyard that day because it still had dirt on it. It still had the same lock. And at that point, they opened the body bag and revealed the same black plastic and small body that appeared to be in the black plastic.
And then what did you observe?
Dr. Warren and his team cut down the middle of the black plastic to open up what was inside. At that time, I observed a small child with duct tape on his head from his chin to his forehead area, tightly wrapped around his head. He had red pajama pants on, red pajama shirt. He had his arms folded this way across his body. And there was duct tape from elbow all the way around to his other elbow. He had his ankles also bound with duct tape. He was still wearing his nighttime pull-up diaper. He had black socks with the word Skechers in orange. I could tell that he was going through various states of decomposition based on the skin color.
Judge, I'm going to object.
Grounds?
He doesn't have the experience to make a determination about the levels of decomposition. He's speculating.
I'll sustain the objection and strike the final part of the answer about decomposition, Mr. Wilkie.
Right. Detective, what did the body's skin look like?
The skin was sloughing. It appeared to be bluish green, black, yellow. And through my training experience, going through and handling different dead bodies at different stages of decomposition, that's what I read.
Judge, I'm going to object again. There's been no foundation for him to make that sort of medical assessment. He's not a medical doctor.
Your Honor, my argument would be that's not a medical assessment. It makes it on his training and experience.
I'll overrule the objection. If you'd like to cross further, you'll have a chance, Mr. Pryor. The objection is overruled. The foundation laid in the previous response.
Detective, once this the body was taken out of the bag and you made the observations that you've just described, what happened next?
Dr. Warren and his team then cut the white plastic that was wrapped around his head and duct taped. They cut down the middle to reveal what was underneath. And at that point, I observed another piece of duct tape stretched from JJ's jawline to jawline over his mouth. He also cut the several layers of duct tape from his arms, and it revealed some more duct tape that had his wrist bound underneath all those layers of duct tape. He then took his bottom pajamas off and shirt, and it also revealed the nighttime pull-up diaper he was still wearing.
Now, Detective, you spoke about the duct tape and bag over the head, correct?
Correct.
And you've been referring to this as JJ.
Yes.
Until that duct tape and bag were removed, though, were you able to identify him as JJ?
No, once they removed the duct tape in the bag, through looking at all the photographs for the last 8 months of JJ, I recognized him to be the same little boy laying on that table as JJ Vallow. He had the same hairstyle, shorter on the sides, longer on top. At that point, I recognized him as JJ.
Once the clothing was removed, what did you observe happen next?
Dr. Warren pointed out some bruising on his arms, on his ankles, on his chest. He also pointed out some scratch marks on the left side of his neck, just under the duct tape. At that point, Dr. Warren and his team performed the autopsy.
Your Honor, I'd ask that the witness be shown state's exhibits 12A through 12B.
A through B.
E.
B, thank you.
Detective, can you review those exhibits? Let me know when you've had a chance to. Do you recognize state's exhibits 12A through E?
Yes,
What do they purport to be?
JJ Vallow laying on the table after they opened the black plastic.
And were you present when those pictures were taken?
Yes,
You were in the same room,
correct.
Are those true and accurate representations of what you observed that day?
Yes,
Your Honor, I'd ask that state's exhibits 12A through E be entered into evidence.
No objection, Judge.
Very well. 12A through E are admitted. All of these are graphic in nature, will not be published or shown on the court's live feed or public in the courtroom. They'll be published to the jurors, however you wish to split.
Thank you. Detective, can you describe to the jury what you observed in state's exhibit 12A?
once they removed the black plastic that JJ Vallow was in, this is the first thing we saw. You can see on the white plastic on top of his head, that's the slit that was made when his head was sticking out of the ground. You can see the duct tape I testified to wrapped around his entire face. His red pajamas are still soaked with body decomposition. The level of duct tape on his arms is what really caught my attention. And he still has he has a white and blue child blanket wrapped around him.
You describe for the jury what you observed in States Exhibit 12B.
This is the JJ's legs, his bottom half, he has his red pajama pants on still. His ankles, like I testified, are wrapped with duct tape. Those are his black Skechers socks that he had on. It's hard to see there too, but his legs and body are also soaked with decomposition.
You describe for the jury what you saw in States Exhibit 12C.
When I spoke earlier that Dr. Warren cut down the white plastic and the duct tape that was covering his head, this is what we saw. You can see the other layer of duct tape around his mouth that went from jawline to jawline. You can see his hair, brown hair still was matted down to his head, wet, soaked with body decomposition. But at that point, I was able to still recognize him as JJ Vallow.
You observed in 12D.
That's the white bag that was covering his head. That looks like blood. In the bag, it's actually body decomposition, just breaking down. It appeared to be a normal trash bag. It had a red drawstring. And you can see, if you look close, it had the waffle style pattern. The expandable type trash bag. There's still pieces of duct tape that are attached. That's what that photograph depicts.
Describe for the jury what you saw in 12B.
That's just another photo of JJ. The tape is starting to lose its stickiness because of the way the body is. It's just a different photo or a different angle of JJ's face.
So can I have a re-sidebar, council? Bit earlier than normal, but we are going to take a mid-morning recess at this time. We'll reconvene here about 10:30 to get started with additional testimony.
All rise, please.
Gentlemen, you are not part of the court staff. Please enter the courtroom.
secure building, the one we're in, is right here. It's this courtroom and the courtroom next to us, Judge Domina's courtroom. So we'll participate regardless of what we're doing at 1:45. We'll stay here. There may be other people joining us in the building, and we'll just participate in it until it's over. So I anticipate 10, 15 minutes.
Okay.
So look forward to it, be excited about it.
Very exciting.
And we'll see what happens, all right?
Judge,
So that,
I
now,
guess I have a question.
Yes.
About I agree with all of that, and I would anticipate being allowed a very brief oral argument would be fine.
all right, well, I anticipated there'd be some argument involved, so we'll do the argument this morning if there's time. If not, we'll come back this afternoon and do it.
Okay.
And then I may want to reflect on what was testified to, and if I did that, we'd probably look to a day next week to come back for a decision.
Right, that'd be fine with us.
Also, I might decide to do it today. Depends on how things proceed.
Okay. And there's Dr. Robbins, I see him up.
All right, he materialized. It's another digital miracle that he's here. All right. Well, then I think we're all set. We're on the record in State versus Geyser. Dr. Robbins, can you see and hear the court? All right, well, I can see you and hear you as well. We're prepared. I understand you. We're prepared to hear you as a witness. I understand you're prepared to testify as a witness.
While using a dangerous weapon? Answer, yes. As to count 5 of the information, Riley Madison, the jury finds Nikolai Mew guilty of first-degree recklessly endangering safety as submitted. Did Mr. Mew commit the crime while using a dangerous weapon? Answer, yes. As to count 6 of the information, Madison Cohen, the jury finds Nikolai Mew guilty of battery as charged. Did Mr. Mew commit the crime while using a dangerous weapon? Answer, yes. Members of the jury, I do have to verify that this is in fact a unanimous verdict. So I'm going to ask each of you if I correctly read the verdict and if you agree with it. So when I call your name, if you agree with the verdict that I read, please answer by saying yes. If you disagree with the verdict, you can answer by saying no. Ms. Navarro, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Mr. Cook, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Mr. Snell, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Ms. Pelzel, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Mr. Wiley, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Ms. Knapp, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Mr. Diedrich, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Ms. McMahon, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Mr. Henderlong, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Mr. Ashland, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Ms. McMullen, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Ms. Lewandowski, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Any additional polling? No? All right, it is a unanimous verdict. Members of the jury, your service in this case is completed. You are free to read accounts about this trial. You are free to talk about this case with anyone. However, you do not have to discuss this case with anybody or answer any questions about this case other than from the court. So this includes the parties, the lawyers, the media, or anybody else. If you do decide to discuss this case with anyone, please treat any such discussion with a degree of solemnity, such that whatever you would say, you'd be willing to say in front of your fellow jurors or here in open court. It is in the public interest that there be the utmost freedom of debate in the jury room, and that jurors be permitted to express their views without fear of incurring the anger of any litigants or the public. For that reason, please respect the privacy of the views of your fellow jurors. If you do decide to speak, please only speak for yourselves and not for anybody else. On behalf of my colleagues, Judges Needham, Vlack, and Nordstrand, along with my courtroom staff, thank you for your participation in this important case. Court is now adjourned. Please take the jury out.
All rise for the jury.
Please be seated. Based on the unanimous verdict, I will enter convictions on each of the 6 counts. Bail is revoked. Mr. Mew will be held in custody pending sentencing. My staff will contact the attorneys and will schedule the sentencing date. I will order a pre-sentence investigation report, but we can do the scheduling at a later time. Is there anything else, Mr. Anderson?
No.
Mr. Schroffesi?
No, sir.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Court is adjourned.
Folks, if anybody on this side of the courtroom could please exit, anybody on this side, please stay. Okay, thank you. And you're welcome as well. So you're standing, it looks like. Okay. Well, if you could raise your right hand, our clerk will swear you in.
Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give in this matter before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
All right, very good. Thank you. And then Attorney Cotton.
Good morning, Dr. Robbins. I'm going to just start by asking you if you have
Tell just one housekeeping matter. State your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Yeah, sure. It's Kenneth Robbins, R-O-B-B-I-N-S.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Attorney Cotton.
Dr. Robbins, you have a curriculum vitae or a professional resume,
I do.
and you provided that to our office as part of this process.
I did.
We've marked that as Exhibit A. Madam Clerk, I believe it's in the Exhibit Q. You've had a chance to review that. Is that an accurate resume that you provided to our office?
It is.
Judge, without objection from the state, I'm just going to move into admission, request admission of Exhibit A.
Any objections?
No.
All right, received.
Dr.
Is there an exhibit list?
Yes. You have an exhibit list that you're running?
Oh, it's the attorney should prepare an exhibit list.
Yeah, that's all. He doesn't have a separate one for defense.
Oh, really? Well, you have to prepare one, and you'll have to get that done.
And that document should be available for review. You might have to refresh it.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Just email Kate so she can put that together. Dr. Robbins, I want to ask you just a little bit about your professional background. What is your educational background?
I went to medical school at University of Michigan, graduated in 1977, and then did residencies in both internal medicine and psychiatry, and am board certified in both.
And you're currently board certified in both?
Correct.
What's your current employment?
I have been directing a Medicaid grant to reorganize the mental health system in several counties in California. I serve as medical director for Rock County and their mental health system. I do some work at a Grace Hospice. I do some consulting for the Madison Police Department.
Okay, when you said Rock County, you're referring to here in Wisconsin, Rock County.
Exactly.
And then you're also helping reconfigure the mental health system in some counties in California.
Exactly.
Do you have any connection to the Mendota Mental Health Center here in Wisconsin?
So I was the medical director at Mendota for most of the 90s, but I don't have an official role there at the moment.
What is the medical director? What were your duties as medical director of Mendota?
Essentially to oversee the clinical care.
Okay, are you in charge of the doctors and the various treating professionals in that capacity?
Exactly.
Now you're familiar with Miss Geiser because of your history with her, is that fair to say?
That is fair to say.
What history do you have with Miss Geiser, if you could just summarize, please?
So as I have in my report, I've interviewed her several times in the past, initially for a competency evaluation back in June of 2014, next as an evaluation for her appropriateness for a reverse waiver back in June of 2015, and then a criminal responsibility evaluation in September of 2017.
Then have you had an opportunity to prepare conditional release reports or to work on that for her?
Just this for this particular conditional release application, yes.
Okay, and that report was submitted to the court previously, right?
And that's correct.
And I believe also without objection, Judge, I'm just going to tender Exhibit B, which is Dr. Robbins' report.
All right, thank you.
Dr. Robbins, you prepared this report after doing what type of investigation? Could you just explain what you did?
Yes, I read through her medical records at Winnebago Mental Health Institute. I spoke with some of the staff working with Ms. Geiser. I read through some of the other reports as well as my own. I read through